A new name intended to end decades of diplomatic deadlock, but nationalists in both Greece and Macedonia are unhappy at the choice, Republic of North Macedonia. From historical legacy to modern identity, why so much hanging on a name? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Elizabeth Puranam. While the agreement between Athens and Skopje of a new name for Macedonia has been praised internationally, it's polarised politics and public opinion in both countries. Thousands of people in Macedonia and Greece took to the streets of their capitals to protest a deal they say is tantamount to a humiliating defeat. A far-right Greek newspaper went so far as to run a front-page graphic showing Greece's Prime Minister, Foreign Minister and President being shot by firing squad for treason. And the agreement has left both governments on shaky ground. John Soropoulos has more from the Greek capital, Athens.
The Conservative opposition leader in Athens has called this a bad agreement. He believes that accepting the Macedonian language and the Macedonian ethnicity are simply non-acceptable national concessions. That is what he said in a statement after the agreement was outlined by the Prime Minister. He believes also that the government doesn't have the political legitimacy to conclude this agreement internationally because it is not supported by the government's junior coalition partner. Without that partner, the government doesn't have a majority in parliament. Over in Skopje, the President Georgi Ivanov has said he would not sign this agreement if Parliament passed it and sent it to his office for counter-signature. But that is not the intention of Prime Minister Zoran Zaev in North Macedonia. What he has said he intends to do is put the agreement to a referendum by the people. If that is successful, he would then ask Parliament to make necessary constitutional amendments which would accommodate the agreement. Therefore, the President would no longer have any constitutional grounds for rejecting it.
Well, a quick look at the beginnings of this long-running dispute shows how much names and symbols really matter when it comes to issues of national identity. Between the end of World War II and the early 1990s, Macedonia was one of 6 republics comprising the former Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Problems with Athens began when it declared independence in 1991 under the name the Republic of Macedonia. Greece immediately opposed it, eventually forcing Skopje to be represented at the UN under the title Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Athens' view was that its neighbour's choice of name was a veiled challenge to Greek sovereignty over its northern province that's also called Macedonia. Well, let's bring in our guests now. Joining us from Skopje is Borian Jovanovski, Chief Editor of Nova TV. In Athens, Panos Polizoidis, political analyst and journalist. And from Chapel Hill in the US state of North Carolina is Dimitar Bechev, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and research fellow at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. A very warm welcome to all of you. Mr. Jovanovski, let me start with you. More than a quarter of a century has passed without Athens and Skopje settling their differences. So why have these two leaders, Prime Ministers Tsipras and Zaev, been able to come to an agreement now?
Well, on behalf of the Macedonian side, the Prime Minister Zaev, I think that after 25 years being in a deadlock and being in a kind of hostage and not being able to go further within the process of European integration, I think it was an imperative or a need and necessity for the new government to find a way out of the blockade that Greek side imposed in Macedonian path towards European integration processes. In 25 years, the past 25 years, Macedonia tried many alternatives, if I may say so, but it was almost impossible to go further. So we passed through the very difficult period of 10 years being under the far-right Vemero ruling party and the kind of authoritarian regime. So it was really a necessity to find out to find an exit strategy and how to progress further towards the European integration processes. So simply, it was really necessary to find a solution with Greece in order to move forward.
Well, let's go to our guest joining us from the Greek capital, Athens. Mr. Polizoidis, why haven't the Greeks allowed Macedonians to call themselves whatever they want? As we heard from our correspondent in Athens, the Greek opposition leader Kyriakos Mitsotakis has said that the acceptance of the Macedonian language and nationality is an unacceptable national threat. Why do they see it that way? Why do they see Macedonians calling themselves that a national threat to Greece?
I think it's mostly a matter of conflicting national narratives on both sides. On north of our border, some people, part of the population, have come to believe that the whole of Macedonia's heritage, including ancient Macedonia, which was quite clearly ethnically Greek, is part of their own heritage. And on this side of the border, Greeks have come to deny the fact that in recent centuries, Macedonia as a geographical entity has been an ethnic mosaic, hosting Greek ethnic Greeks, Ottomans, Slavs, and as a result, the claims to what the Greeks consider to be their own national heritage by the use of the name Macedonia, and also by some hyperboles, I suppose, some excesses, like claiming the heritage of Alexander the Great, who was an ethnic Greek. All this has come to be received as a threat by a very large part of the Greek population. It's not a matter of being literally afraid that one of these days some of the Greek territory will be under military threat from anyone. It's a matter of receiving the claims from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia as an insult to our own national heritage.
Mr. Jovanovski, does Macedonia have claims on more than just Greek heritage, or what the Greeks say is their heritage? You know, does it have, as some Greeks suspect at least, irredentist claims on the Greek province of Macedonia? You know, has the appropriation of figures like Alexander the Great reinforced fears in a region that has been prone to shifting borders?
Till 2008, I'm almost sure that there was no such a claim, except some statement of some nationalists. But till 2008, till the momentum when Greece blocked Macedonia to join NATO in Bucharest summit, there was not such a claim. It's true that since 2008, the nationalist authoritarian government of Mr. Gruevski started so-called process of antiquization. It means he has built a lot of monuments of Alexander the Great and his whole family, if I may say, in a very kitschy way, destroying the image, and architecture of the capital Skopje, and pretending this way that we are a part of the Hellenic history, which was in a way rejected by the big part of the population. But it's true that the authoritarian government of Gruevski gave many arguments to the Greek nationalists to say that we would like, in a way, to steal the Greek Hellenic history.
Yeah, and under the previous government, we also saw the main airport in Skopje being named after Alexander the Great, the main expressway running through the country named after Alexander the Great. I'd like to bring our guest in Chapel Hill in now. Mr. Bechev, has this dispute been damaging to both countries, other than it getting in the way of Macedonia joining the European Union and NATO?
It's been much more damaging for Macedonia than for Greeks. I mean, frankly, Greece has had many other problems on its hands and was happy with the status quo. But as my friend Boran Jovanovski pointed out, Macedonia has been in a limbo because, if anything, the blockage has helped Prime Minister Gruevski, the former chief of cabinet, to concentrate power in his hands and to build this chronic economy and to engage in high-level corruption. And the losers have been the ordinary citizens in Skopje and other places across Macedonia. So that's the sad fact of this limbo. Hopefully now we have the breakthrough.
So what will that mean then, Mr. Jovanovski, for the referendum? Will Macedonians, as Mr. Bechev called them, the losers in this limbo, will they pass this agreement in the referendum, do you think?
Well, it's a very good question. What is important right now is to see what decision it will be taken during the European Council on the end of this month. Nobody's happy in Macedonia with the fact that we have to accept changing of the name. But on the other hand, the big part of population is aware and conscious that we can't stay in this limbo and that we need to go further within the process of European integration. Now, the big question is how the European Council is going to react on the agreement reached between Skopje and Athens. It's very important that the European Council is going to take a decision to allow Macedonia to start the negotiation talk with the European Union. That's the, let's say, the carrot. That's the motive for the big part of Macedonian population to accept the agreement with Greece.
And so far, both the European Council President Donald Tusk and the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg have very enthusiastically welcomed this agreement. But Mr. Polizoidis, what about Greek politicians? We know that Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras is for this, but he has a lot of opposition, and this does need to get through the Greek parliament, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yes. Look, generally, people tend to think that a fair solution is one that vindicates them on all points. Of course, really, the truth is that a good solution is a compromise solution, and there will be points lost on both sides. And that is, I think, a valid observation for both countries. As for Greece now, there is a bit of a paradox because the governing coalition is split. The major coalition party, the Syriza, left-wing Syriza, are all in favor of the agreement, this preliminary agreement. They are the ones who brokered it after all. The junior coalition partner, right-wing independent Greeks, are dead against it, and they have made it absolutely clear that they're going to vote against it in the parliament. And in order for this agreement to be ratified by the Greek parliament, some votes from the opposition will be needed. The first indications that we have from conservative opposition are quite negative. In fact, the leader of New Democracy, the conservative opposition party, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, has tabled a motion of no confidence against the government, declaring as unacceptable some of the provisions of the preliminary agreement, namely the recognition of a Macedonian ethnicity and of a Macedonian language. It remains to be seen. I think that Mitsotakis and the Conservatives are in a position of political awkwardness, because on the one hand, they have been advocating and working towards a solution for many years, and they would like, they are noting that Greece's partners and allies in the European Union and NATO are quite, as you just said, enthusiastic about the agreement. On the other hand, Mitsotakis has to face, is coming up against the fact that a large part of his own party membership and following are against a solution that would allow the use of the name Macedonia as in the official name of the country in any form. So he is really between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, and there's so much opposition to this. I want to go back to Dimitar Bechev and talk about the opposition that's coming from within Macedonia, where we've had the president say that that he is not going to agree to this. Does it need the president's approval, Mr. Bechev?
Well, as the opening intro pointed out, if there is a referendum, it can go around it. And I mean, frankly, Mr. Ivanov has tried to play abstractionist for a long time. Just to bring a story a bit back, last year, he was overstepping his constitutional mandate, refusing to pass the investiture to Mr. Zaev. So that's his way of asserting himself and to pay back his dues to the main party that appointed him. But at the end of the day, if the people of Macedonia, if the citizens speak out and ratify this treaty through a referendum, there will be very little Ivanov could do, and it will be a last man stand. It's interestingly, he today is in Sofia in Bulgaria, where he tried to garner some support from the Bulgarian leadership. But I think he was told that Sofia stands by the agreement, Zaev and Tsipras.
Well, I think someone who is supporting the Macedonian president on this is actually the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who is calling on that main opposition party that the president is aligned to and who was previously in power to fight what he's calling an externally imposed compromise. Why is the Hungarian Prime Minister weighing in on this, Mr. Bechev?
Well, Viktor Orban has been an ally of the former Macedonian Prime Minister Nikola Gruevski, whom he credits with helping him tackle the migration crisis of 2015-2016. But more broadly, Orban is exploiting all the opportunities to present himself as the new rising star of the European center-right.
Yeah.
It's not just Macedonia. We've seen one of his allies getting lots of votes in his neighboring, in next door Slovenia. So Orban has a longer game to play at the EU level as the voice of conservative nationalists against what you might call the liberal side of the political spectrum, and he is trying to get some dividends out of the situation.
Right. So as we can see, a lot of opposition, but as we've already discussed, there is a lot of support for this as well. Mr. Jovanovski, why is this so important to the EU and to NATO?
Macedonia is, it's a part of the Balkans. It's a very complicated region, if I may say. Also, Macedonia has a complicated structure. Macedonia is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious society. So the only, let's say, cohesive force to bring together and to keep together Macedonia as a such is the idea of being integrated within European Union and to join NATO. That's let's say a very important condition for a big part of the population, ethnic Albanians, who are really wanted to see Macedonia to be part of the European Union. So that's the only cohesive force right now for Macedonia to keep Macedonia as such. Otherwise, if we stay out of the European Union, it could, in a foreseeable future, we could have a serious problem to keep Macedonia as such.
And Mr. Polizoidis, would this integration also allow, the West to claim a victory in the sort of standoff we're seeing at the moment against Russia?
I think in terms of in geopolitical terms, yes, Macedonia is the focus of a perceived fight over it, including Russia, including Turkey. So there appears to be a lot of interest in trying to influence that country. And if the country joins the European institutions and obviously the North Atlantic Treaty, that more or less would be the end of that fight. And in economical terms, I think it will be quite beneficial for Greece as well. There are many Greeks who believe that instead of fighting over that name, we should find a mutually acceptable solution and keep doing business with these people to to the benefit of both sides. So, and that's obviously a pragmatic view. Having said that, I believe that at the end of the day, the Greek Parliament will ratify, and this is only a guess, of course, but I think I have a feeling that the Greek Parliament will ratify the preliminary agreement. Should that happen, and should the Parliament in Skopje not ratify the agreement, Greece at least will have scored some very important international goodwill points. It will have offered a solution even if it was not accepted by the other side.
Mr. Polizoidis, you just answered the question, my last question that I was going to ask. So let me put it to our other two guests. Dimitar Bechev, do you think that both the Greek Parliament and that Macedonia will be able to pass this agreement in a referendum and get it through?
I'm very hopeful that at the end of the day, reason will prevail. But still, my gut feeling is that the ball is in Greece's court. And I'm really encouraged that Mr. Polizoidis thinks that Tsipras will get it through. It's very much incumbent on the opposition, on the kind of liberal forces that are not part of this government to be responsible. Because at the end of the day, Greece tends to benefit. Just a personal anecdote, I remember in the worst days of this dispute in the early 90s, businessmen in Thessaloniki, the main city of northern Greece, including a friend of mine, had to do business through third countries, including Norway, to reach the market in Macedonia, because there was an embargo and things were really tough between Skopje and Athens. I don't think we are back to those days, but we are at the last mile now, and hopefully there'll be political foresight in both places, and we will see the deal through.
Because there is, of course, so much at stake. Mr. Jovanovski, let me give you the last word. What do you think?
Well, I'm sharing the hope with my friend Bechev. Yes, it will be a difficult path to reach the adoption of the agreement in the parliament, having in mind the opposition of the opposition party and the president Ivanov, and the very difficult circumstances in which this party is right now, having in mind that the former leader of this party, the former prime minister, is he has to explain himself in front of the court for many charges related to the corruption, and many high-level people, highly ranked people in this party are also in the same problem, and in a way they see this process as a possibility to reach an amnesty for what they did in the past. So it's a bit, there is a bit, political.
Mr. Jovanovski, you have 10 seconds.
On the end, yes, I believe that we are going to have this agreement adopted in the parliament.
All right, that is Borjan Jovanovski in Skopje. Thank you to all of our guests, Borjan Jovanovski in Skopje, Panos Polizoidis in Athens, and Dimitar Bechev in North Carolina. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, do go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Elizabeth Puranam, and the whole team here, bye for now.